What's my favourite plant? That is impossible to answer, but I'm going to, off the top of my head, say my favourite plant is the peony. Why do I say that? It's because just recently I've observed bees on peonies as just being phenomenally attracted to this great flower, and as an example of how flowers can attract pollinators, it's a good start. It's too many, I'm afraid. I can't answer that question.
My favourite plant is like the horse chestnut tree or conker tree, because I would say it's the first plant that I kind of grew, but my granddad grew, where I picked up the seed when we were on a walk, and he grew it, and it's like the plant I have like a nice, I would say I have a relationship with.
I absolutely love orchids because they're super weird and super parasitic, and they're like the trickster. So they're like Loki, right? If you love Marvel, they're like the Loki plants. They just are like mischievous and tricky and just want to get everything without putting any effort in whatsoever, which is why I absolutely love orchids. Like the bee orchid that looks like a bee. So it tricks bees into mating with it. So it's collecting its pollen without giving anything away. So most plants will give like sugary treats. They don't. They're like, oh, look at us, we're a bee. And then they get close and they're like, this isn't actually a bee. But by the time they've got pollen. And so they're like going around fertilizing bee orchids without realizing they're not actually bees.
My favorite plant is ghost pipes. So you may know about it. So it's a parasitic plant, and so it's called ghost pipes because it's completely white. So it's a parasitic plant. It doesn't photosynthesize itself, and it draws all its nutrition from other organisms, interacting with other organisms, and it's actually a parasite of fungi that are then interacting with plants. And so it's this weird, for someone who's interested in pathology, it's kind of the other way around. It's the plant being a parasite of the other kingdom rather than the other kingdom being a parasite of plants. So I really like it, and it's also quite pretty.
I really, really like plants, and I thoroughly enjoy gardening, although I wish I knew more of the names of the plants, their real Latin names. That would be fantastic, but I'm always learning more. And I think for me, my favourite plants are roses. So I absolutely love roses. I think they're stunningly beautiful, and they come in so many different forms that I think that they're definitely my favourite plant for the garden, at least. And then when it comes to also plant pathogens, I really, really find the wheat rusts fascinating. I think that's why I want to work on them. They have so much unknown information that we need to kind of get to grips with. They are so complicated, and I think anything that we can learn will be a step forward. And I think the impact that we can have by deciphering all of the secrets that they're still holding will be really fantastic. And I really hope that we can continue to help decipher some of those secrets throughout my career working with the wheat rusts. Yeah.
My favourite plant, so a few years ago I went to California to Sequoia National Park, and those sequoia trees were just absolutely mind-blowing in how big they were, and just the awe I have for those trees, how humongous they were. I absolutely love them, so my favourite plant would have to be the sequoia trees.
My favourite plant is the Tulipa Queen of the Night. I love a tulip for its form. I love the fact that it's iridescent, and it's a fantastic pollinator.
I like the quirky plants, I have to admit. I really like the quirky plants. I like things like euphorbias because they're just so out there. They have lots and lots of male anthers sort of coming progressively, and the female's sort of on its own little stalk. It's got a little sort of, it's got this little 3-part body that sits the outside of the male. It's got its 3 little stigmas, each one for each seed, that it's got inside its little 3-lobed ovary, and it just sort of sit there quite happily while the males are working away manically, and then they have these fantastic big nectaries, which can be quite nicely coloured as well, to attract in the pollinating insects. And they're just such funky things. But one of my favourite, very underrated and unnoticed flowers is actually the the ribwort plantain, like Plantego lanceolata. Most people consider it a weed, but whenever you actually look at the really tightly condensed flowers, they are the most exquisite little four-pointed stars. They look like brown tissue paper. There's a sort of a darker stripe down the middle of each petal. And out of the centre of this gorgeous little flower, which is the petals are all joined together in the base, you have these four dainty little ant stamens coming out, sort of just dangling in the wind, waiting for somebody to come along and brush against them. And I just think they're exquisite.
My favorite plant is the corpse flower because it operates on such a slow time scale. And it's quite interesting that it has such an interesting morphology and an interesting life cycle.
My favorite plant is Metasequoia, and that is a tree in the gymnosperm. So it's a seed plant, but it is not a flowering plant. And they only have one single species in that genus. So it has the reputation as a living fossil. So once they thought to extinct until they've been rediscovered in China. And the reason why I like it is quite personal, because we use that tree as a street tree in my community when I grown up since a childhood. And my grandparents' generation planted those trees. So apart from the magnificent appearance, because they have the feather-like leaves and it's green, so the leaf buds every spring, it's just delightfully green, and it's full of the energy. So yeah, I really like it.
So my favourite plant of mine, won't come as a surprise, it is a seagrass. I guess my favourite seagrass is Posidonia oceanica. It's a seagrass which is endemic to the Mediterranean Sea, and it's, I guess, the queen of seagrasses. It forms, I guess it's the oak tree of the seagrass world. So slow growing, forms big, thick meadows, massively complex habitat, super important for coastal fisheries and food security. It's the champion, I guess, in the marine space for carbon sequestration, so stores huge amounts of carbon. And it's just stunning to look at. So, you know, as a plant in and of itself, it's inspiring.
My favourite plant, it's a difficult one. I quite like to eat food, so it's going to be along the lines of something edible. But you know what, I might go with mint. It's just a tasty herb.
My favourite plant. So I do have lots of orchids at home, and I think they're very pretty. And I think it's maybe because of their perseverance, so they can thrive in very weird environments, and they need very little attention, and they're beautiful. So I would go for these. Basically, these are my favorite plants. I'm not sure if it's for the right reason, but
I actually really like spider plants, just because my supervisor would love me to say tobacco is my favorite because that's my model organism. I actually just really like spider plants because in so many ways I find they're really cool and interesting. I've had exactly the same one since year 7 that's still alive in my bed. I hope it's still alive. I haven't checked on it in a while. But they do a really cool kind of proliferation where they make genetically identical copies of themselves at the end of long branches, this process of stolonation. So you have one plant that can cover a huge area. And particularly you can take clippings of these stolons, they're like little baby plants themselves, put them on soil and then just give them to your friends. They turn into large plants pretty much immediately. And I just think it's really cool because it's this, I don't know, idea of handing on, just like, this is a little gift, this is something I've grown, this is a shared interest or whatever that I can pass on. But I actually just really like the way they look in a room as well.
I think actually my favourite plant isn't a research plant of mine. I have a pitcher plant in my bathroom, and it's just so amazing because the end of the leaf curves down and forms this fabulously elaborate pitcher. Mine are about yay long. And it's just so amazing that from these very plain, strappy leaves, I just look at it and I'm like, how do these cells manage to coordinate themselves to produce this elaborate and quite ugly looking picture though? But it's just so weird and alien looking that I think probably my favourite plant is my pitcher plant.
I feel like I'd be bad if I said it wasn't wheat. It's my favourite crop plant.
You could do more than one, that's fine. Go for it.
My second favourite plant, other than wheat, is probably yew trees, Taxus bachata or bachata. I think because they look so calm and peaceful but melancholy, and also you can't eat any of it apart from the red berries, the red arils, which are the only part that aren't poisonous, which are the part that look the most poisonous, which I like that deception.
I think I'm going to put all my science aside and go for just a love of gardening, actually. And I'm actually going to go for roses because I just love roses as something that's very evocative, and just the fragrance of traditional roses. And I think that's a really bad answer for a plant scientist,
No, it's
but
not.
on the top of my head, I think, as well as I love it from a scientific point of view, plants are just great. But what I would say about that, actually, as a cell biologist, is that promotes an image of plants being terribly gentle and graceful. And we know from all our studies with confocal microscopy and looking at cell dynamics and live imaging that actually plants are not peaceful and graceful at all. They're really going great guns all the time with everything that's going on with those cells, and they're really active and dynamic. So I think if you're sitting out in a garden feeling peaceful, looking around at all these lovely gentle plants, you need to think again.
So my favourite plant is hops, because it's used to flavour beer. And I think that it's a great British species. So nothing not to like about hops.
Is it because you like beer?
I do like beer, yeah.